Act 1 of The Marrying of Anne Leete by Harley Granville-Barker. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The cast of characters. Mr. Carnaby Leete, a politician, read by
Andrew James.
Anne Leete, his youngest daughter, read by
Annie Mars.
Lord John Carp, a scheming politician, read by
Todd.
George Leete, the only son, read by
Tchaikovsky. John
Abud, a young gardener, read by
Alan Mapstone.
Sarah, Lady Cottesham, eldest Leete daughter, read by
Kelly Taylor.
Mr. Daniel Tatton, read by
Craig Franklin.
The Reverend Dr Remnant, read by
Larry Wilson.
Mrs. Opie, read by
Michele
Dimmuck, read by
Taye Abdul.
Mr. Tetgeen, read by
Algy PugLord
Arthur Carp, read by
Tomas Peter.
Mr. Smallpiece, read by
Kevin Brazel.
Sir George Leete, read by
Algy
Lady Leete, read by
WendyKatzHiller.
Mr. Crow, read by
Chip in Boulder, Colorado.
Dolly, Mrs. George Leete, read by
TallyTiger.
The Reverend Mr. Tozer, read by
John Payton.
Mr. Prestige, read by
Craig Franklin.
Mrs. Prestige, read by
Availle.
Stage Directions, read by Wayne Cook. The first 3 acts of the comedy pass in the garden at Markswade, Mr. Carnaby Leete's house near Reading, during a summer day towards the end of the 18th century. The first act at 4 in the morning, the second shortly after midday, and the third near to sunset. The fourth act takes place one day in the following winter. The first scene in the hall at Markswade, the second scene in a cottage some 10 miles off. This part of the Markswade garden looks to have been laid out during the 17th century. In the middle a fountain, the centerpiece figure of a nymph, now somewhat cracked and pouring nothing from the amphora. The rim of the fountain is high enough and broad enough to be a comfortable seat. The close turf round is in parts worn bare. This plot of ground is surrounded by a terrace 3 feet higher. 3 sides of it are seen. From 2 corners broad steps lead down. Stone urns stand at the bottom and top of the stone balustrades. The other 2 corners are rounded convexly into broad stone seats. Along the edges of the terrace are growing rose trees close together. Behind these, paths. Behind those, shrubs and trees. No landscape is to be seen. A big copper beech overshadows the seat on the left. A silver beech droops over the seat on the right. The trees far to the left indicate an orchard. The few to the right are more of the garden sort. It is the height of summer, and after a long drought the rose trees are dilapidated. It is very dark in the garden. Though there may be by now a faint morning light in the sky, it has not penetrated yet among these trees. It is very still, too. Now and then the leaves of a tree are stirred as if in its sleep. That is all. Suddenly a shrill, frightened, but not tragical scream is heard. After a moment Anne Leete runs quickly down the steps and on to the fountain, where she stops, panting. Lord John Carp follows her, but only to the top of the steps, evidently not knowing his way. Anne is a girl of 20, he an English gentleman, nearer 40 than 30.
I apologize.
Why is it so dark?
Can you hear what I'm saying?
Yes.
I apologize for having kissed you, almost unintentionally.
Thank you. Mind the steps down.
I hope I'm sober, but the air...
Shall we sit for a moment? There are several seats to sit on somewhere.
This is a very dark garden.
There is a slight pause.
You've won your bet.
So you did scream.
But it wasn't fair.
Don't reproach me.
Somebody's coming.
How do you know?
I can hear somebody coming.
We're not sitting down.
Anne's brother, George Leete, comes to the top of the steps and afterwards down them. Rather an old young man.
Anne,
Yes?
my lord,
Here.
I can't see you. I'm sent to say we're all anxious to know what ghost or other bird of night or beast has frightened Anne to screaming point, and won you, the best in Tatton's stables. So he says now. He's quite annoyed.
The mare is a very good mare.
He betted it because he wanted to bet it. I didn't want him to bet it.
What frightened her?
I had rather, my lord, that you did not tell my brother why I screamed.
I kissed her.
Did you?
I had rather, Lord John, that you had not told my brother why I screamed.
I misunderstood you.
I've broke up the whist party. Anne, shall we return?
She's not here.
Anne?
Lady Cottesham, Anne's sister and 10 years older, and Mr. Daniel Tatton, a well-living, middle-aged country gentleman, arrive together. Tatton carries a double candlestick. The light's out.
3 steps.
No, 4.
Miss Leete.
Tatton, in the darkness, finds himself close to George.
I'm in a rage with you, my lord.
He lives next door.
My mistake.
He passes on.
Confess that she did it to please you.
Screamed?
Lost my bet. We'll say won your bet to please you. Was scared at the dark. Oh, fie.
Miss Leete trode on a toad.
I barred toads. Here.
I don't think it.
I barred toads. Did I forget to? Well, it's better to be a sportsman.
And whereabouts is she?
Anne, from the corner she has slunk to.
Here I am, Sally.
Miss Anne, I forgive you. I'm smiling. I assure you, I'm smiling.
We all laughed when we heard you.
Which reminds me, young George Leete, had you the ace?
King? Knave? Here are the cards, but I can't see.
I had the king.
Anne, quietly to her sister.
He kissed me. A man would.
What were trumps?
What were we playing? Cricket?
Anne, as quietly again.
Do you think I'm blushing? It's probable. I am by the feel of me. George, we left Papa sitting quite still.
Didn't he approve of the bet?
He said nothing.
Why, who doesn't love sport?
I'm the man to grumble. Back a woman's pluck again. Never. My lord, you weren't the one to go with her. As umpire.
No, to be sure.
How was it I let that pass? Playing 2 games at once, haven't I cause of complaint? But a man must give and take.
The master of the house, father of George and Sarah Cottesham and Anne, Mr. Carnaby Leete, comes slowly down the steps unnoticed by the others, a man over 50, a la Lord Chesterfield. George to Lord John.
Are you sure you're quite comfortable there?
Whatever I'm sitting on hasn't given way yet.
Don't forget that you're riding to Brighton with me.
Tomorrow.
Today. Well, the hour before sunrise is no time at all.
65 miles.
What are we all sitting here for?
I say people ought to be in bed and asleep.
But the morning air is delightful.
Mr. Tatton, jumping at the new voice.
Leete, now, had you the ace?
Of course.
We should have lost that too, Lady Charlie.
Bear up, Mr. Tat.
Come, a game of whist is a game of whist.
And so I strolled out after you all.
She trod on a toad.
Carnaby, carelessly.
Does she say so?
Mr. Tatton, with mock roguishness.
Ah.
George is on the terrace, looking to the left, through the trees. Tatton is sitting on the edge of the fountain.
Here's the sun to show us ourselves.
Leete, this pond is full of water.
Anne, if you are there,
Yes, Papa.
apologise profusely. It's your garden.
Oh,
Coattails, Tatton, or worse.
Mr. Tatton, ruefully discovering damp spots about him.
Nothing vastly to matter.
Hardy, well-preserved country gentleman.
I bet I'm a younger man than you, my lord.
Anne, suddenly to the company generally.
I didn't tread upon any toad. I was kissed.
There is a pause of some discomfort.
Anne, come here to me.
I apologized.
George from the terrace.
Are we to be insulted?
My dear Carp, say no more.
There is another short pause. By this it is twilight. Faces can be plainly seen.
Listen, the first bird.
Oh dear, no. They begin to sing long before this.
What is it now? A lark?
I don't know.
Anne quietly to Sarah.
That's a thrush.
Sarah capping her.
A thrush.
Charming.
Mr. Tatton to Lord John.
I don't see why you couldn't have told me how it was that she screamed.
Our dear Tatton.
Sotto voce to his son.
Hold your tongue, George.
I did bar toads, and you said I didn't. And anyway, I had a sort of right to know.
You know now.
I wonder if this seat is dry.
There's been no rain for weeks.
The roads will be dusty for you, Mr. Tat.
Just one moment. You don't mind me, Miss Anne, do you?
I don't mind much.
We said distinctly, to the orchard, end of the garden, and back. And if frightened, that's the word, so much as to scream. Now, what I want to know is...
Consider the bet off.
Certainly not. And we should have added, alone.
Tatton has persistence.
Mr. Tat, do you know where people go who take things seriously?
Miss Leete, were you frightened when Lord John kissed you?
Damnation!
My excellent Tatton, much as I admire your searchings for the truth, I must here parentally intervene, regretting, my dear Tatton, that my own carelessness of duenterhood has permitted this to occur.
After this there is silence for a minute.
Can I borrow a horse of you, Mr. Leete?
my entire stable, and your Ronald shall be physicked.
Barton that you are, to be riding.
I prefer it to a jolting chase.
You will have my mare.
Lord John, ignoring him.
This has been the most enjoyable 3 weeks.
4.
Is it 4?
We bow to the compliment, our duty to his grace.
When I see him.
To our dear cousin.
Mr. Tatton to Lady Cottesham.
Sir Charles at Brighton?
Sarah not answering.
To be sure, we did discover our mother was a second cousin, once removed to you.
If the prince will be there, he is in waiting.
Any message, Lady Cottesham? Since we speak out of session.
I won't trust you.
Or trouble you while I still may frank a letter. But my son-in-law is a wretched correspondent. Do you admire men of small vices? They make admirable husbands, though their wives will be grumbling. Silence, Sarah, but that's a good sign.
Papa is a connoisseur of humanity.
Anne to the company as before.
No, Mr. Tatton, I wasn't frightened when Lord John kissed me. I screamed because I was surprised, and I'm sorry I screamed.
Sarah quietly to Anne.
My dear Anne, you're a fool.
Anne quietly to Sarah.
I will speak sometimes.
Sit down again.
Again an uncomfortable silence, a ludicrous air about it this time.
Now, we'll say no more about that bet, but I was right.
Do you know, Mr. Tatton, that I have a temper to lose?
What the devil does that matter to me, sir? My lord?
I owe you a saddle and bridle.
You'll oblige me by taking the mare?
We'll discuss it tomorrow.
I've said all I have to say.
The whole matter's ridiculous.
I see the joke. Good night, Lady Cottesham, and I kiss your hand.
Good morning, Mr. Tat.
Good morning, Miss Anne.
Sarah shielding her sister.
Good morrow is appropriate.
I'll go to the fields.
To Carnaby.
Thank you for a pleasant evening. Good morrow, George. Do we start at midday, my lord?
Any time you please.
Not at all.
He hands the candlestick, of which he has never before let go, to George.
I brought this for a link. Thank you.
Midday will be midnight if you sleep at all now. Make it 2 or later.
We'll put up at Guildford. I've done so before. I haven't my hat. It's a day and a half's ride.
Tatton goes quickly up the other steps and away. It is now quite light. George stands by the steps. Lord John is on one of the seats. Carnaby strolls round, now and then touching the rose trees. Sarah and Anne are on the other seat.
Morning. These candles still smell.
How lively one feels and isn't.
The flowers are opening.
Anne in a whisper.
Couldn't we go in?
Never run away.
Everything looks so odd.
What's o'clock, my lord?
4:30.
Anne to Sarah.
My eyes are hot behind.
What ghosts we seem!
What has made us spend such a night?
Anne incited me to it.
He takes snuff.
In a spirit of rebellion against good country habits.
And to her sister again.
Don't talk about me.
They can see that you're whispering.
Informing me now she was a woman and wanted excitement.
There's a curse.
How else do you conceive life for women?
George is naturally cruel. Excitement's our education. Please vary it, though.
I've always held that to colour in the world picture is the greatest privilege of the husband, Sarah.
Sarah not leaving Anne's side.
Yes, Papa.
Sarah, when Sir Charles leaves Brighton...
Sarah rises, but will not move further. Carnaby, sweetly threatening.
Shall I come to you?
But she goes to him now.
By a gossip letter from town.
Sarah tensely.
What is it?
You mentioned to me something of his visiting Naples?
Very well, I detest Italy.
Let's have George's opinion.
He leads her towards George.
Yes?
Upon Naples?
I remember Naples.
Sarah, admire those roses.
Sarah cynically echoing her father.
Let's have George's opinion.
Now Carnaby has drawn them both away upon the terrace, and the coast being clear, Lord John walks towards Anne, who looks at him very scaredly.
Emblem of secrecy among the ancients.
Look at this heavy head. Won't it snap off?
The three move out of sight.
I'm sober now.
I'm not.
Uncompromising young lady.
And excuse me, I don't want to play.
Don't you wish me to apologize quietly to you?
Good manners are all mockery, I'm sure.
I'm very much afraid you're a cynic.
I'm not trying to be clever.
Do I tease you?
Do I amuse you?
How dare I say so?
Anne, after a moment.
I was not frightened.
You kissed me back.
Not on purpose. What did two people mean by behaving so in the dark?
I am exceedingly sorry that I hurt your feelings.
Thank you. I like to feel.
And you must forgive me.
Tell me, why did you do it?
Honestly, I don't know. I should do it again.
That's not quite true, is it?
I think so.
What does it matter at all?
Nothing.
George, Sarah, and then Carnaby move into sight and along the terrace. Lord John turns to them.
Has this place been long in your family, Mr. Leete?
Markswade, my wife, brought us. Through the Peters, old Chiltern people. Connections of yours, of course. There is no entail.
Lord John walks back to Anne.
George, you assume this republicanism as you would not, a coat of the latest cut.
Never argue with him. Persist.
So does he.
The three pass along the terrace, Anne to Lord John.
Will you sit down?
It's not worth while. Do you know, I must be quite twice your age.
A doubled responsibility, my lord.
I suppose it is.
I don't say so. That's a phrase from a book. Sounded well.
My dear Miss Anne.
He stops.
Go on being polite.
If you'll keep your head turned away.
Why must I?
There's lightning in the glances of your eye.
Do use vulgar words to me.
Lord John, with a sudden fatherly kindness.
Go to bed. You're dead tired. And good-bye. I'll be gone before you wake.
Goodbye.
She shakes hands with him, then walks towards her father, who is coming down the steps.
Papa, don't my roses want looking to?
Carnaby pats her cheek.
These?
Those.
A bud is under your thumb, horticulturally speaking.
Where's Sally?
She goes on to Sarah, who is standing with George at the top of the steps. Carnaby looks Lord John up and down. Lord John dusting his shoulder.
This cursed powder.
Do we respect innocence enough, any of us?
George comes down the steps and joins them.
Respectable politics will henceforth be useless to me.
My lord, was his grace satisfied with the young man's work abroad, or was he not?
My father used to curse everyone.
That's a mere Downing Street custom.
And I seem to remember that a letter of yours from... where were you in those days?
Paris? Naples? Vienna?
One place once lightened a fit of gout.
George, you have in you the makings of a minister.
No.
Remember, the age tends to the disreputable.
George moves away. Sarah moves towards them.
George is something of a genius, stuffed with theories and possessing of a curious conscience. But I am fortunate in my children.
All the world knows it.
Carnaby to Sarah.
It's looking that yours was a love match, too. I admire you. Anne is to come, so to speak.
Sarah to Lord John.
Were you discussing affairs?
Not I.
Anne?
Yes, George.
She goes to him. They stroll together up the steps and along the terrace.
I'm desperately fagged.
Lord John politely.
A seat.
Also tired of sitting.
Let's have the Brighton news, Carp.
If there's any.
Well, probably I still command abuse. Even my son-in-law must, by courtesy, join in the cry. Oh, poor duty-torn Sarah, you can spread abroad that I am as a green bay tree.
Carnaby paces slowly away from them.
Your father's making a mistake.
Do you think so?
He's played the game once.
I was not then in knowledge of things when he left you.
We remember it.
I should like to hear it.
I have avoided this subject.
With him, yes.
Ah, why did I desert the army for politics?
Better fighting.
It sat so nobly upon him, the leaving us for conscience' sake when we were strongly in power. Strange that 6 months later we should be turned out.
Papa was lucky.
But this second time?
Listen, this is very much a private quarrel with Mr. Pitt, who hates Papa. Gets rid of him.
Shall I betray a confidence?
Better not.
My father advised me to this visit.
your useful visit. More than kind of his grace.
Yes, there's been a paragraph in the Morning Chronicle. The Whigs woo Mr. Carnaby Leete.
We saw to it.
My poor father seems anxious to discover whether the Leete episode will repeat itself entirely. He is chronically unhappy in opposition. Are your husband and his colleagues trembling in their seats?
I can't say.
Politics is a game for clever children, and women, and fools. Will you take a word of warning from a soldier? Your father is past his prime.
Carnaby paces back towards them.
I'm getting to be old for these all-night sittings. I must be writing to your busy brother.
Arthur is at his house.
Pleasantly sounding phrase.
His Grace deserted?
Quite secretaryless.
Lady Arthur lately has been brought to bed. I heard yesterday.
The 7th, is it not? Children require living up to. My congratulations.
Won't you write them?
We are not intimate.
A good woman.
Evidently. Where's Anne? We'll go in.
You're a mother to your sister.
Not I.
My wife went her ways into the next world. Sarah, hers into this. And our little Anne was left with a most admirable governess. One must never reproach circumstances. Man educates woman in his own good time.
I suppose she, or any young girl, is all heart.
What is it that you call heart, sentimentally speaking?
Any bud in the morning?
That man Tatton's jokes are in shocking taste.
Tatton is honest.
I'm much to blame for having won that bet.
Say no more.
What can Miss Anne think of me?
Don't ask her.
Innocency's opinions are invariably entertaining.
Am I the first? I really beg your pardon.
George and Anne come down the steps together.
And what do you think? That is to say, and answer me truthfully, what at this moment is your inclination of mind towards my lord here?
I suppose I love him.
I hope not.
I suppose I love you.
No, 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 no.
Hush, dear.
I'm afraid, Papa, there's something very ill-bred in me.
Down the steps and into the midst of them comes John Abud, carrying his tools, among other things a twist of brass, a young gardener, honest, clean, and common. Abud to Carnaby.
I ask pardon, sir.
So early, Abud. This is your territory. So late. Bed.
Anne starts away up the steps. Sarah is following her.
Goodbye, Lady Cottesham.
At this, Anne stops for a moment, but then goes straight on.
A pleasant journey.
Sarah departs too. George stretching himself.
I'm roused.
Carnaby to Abud.
Leave your tools here for a few moments.
I will, sir.
Abud leaves them, going along the terrace and out of sight.
My head is hot. Pardon me.
Carnaby is sitting on the fountain rim. He dips his handkerchief in the water and wrings it, then takes off his wig and binds the damp handkerchief round his head.
wigs are most comfortable and old-fashioned, unless you choose to be a cropped republican like my son.
Nature.
Nature grows a beard, sir.
I've seen Turks.
Horrible, horrible. Sit down, Carp.
Lord John sits on the fountain rim. George begins to pace restlessly. He has been nursing the candlestick ever since Tatton handed it to him.
George, you look damned ridiculous, strutting arm in arm with that candlestick.
I am ridiculous.
If you're cogitating over your wife and her expectations...
George paces up the steps and away. There is a pause.
Do you tell stories? Good ones?
Sometimes.
There'll be this.
I shan't.
Say no more. If I may so express myself, Carp, you have been taking us for granted.
How wide awake you are. I'm not.
My head's cool. Shall I describe your conduct as an unpremeditated insult?
Don't think anything of the sort.
There speaks your kind heart.
Are you trying to pick a quarrel with me?
As may be.
Why?
For the sake of appearances.
Damn all appearances.
Now, I lose my temper. Sir, you have compromised my daughter.
Nonsense.
A villain. What's your next move?
For a moment Lord John sits with knitted brows. Lord John brutally.
Mr. Leete, your name stinks.
My point of disadvantage?
Lord John apologizing.
Please say what you like. I might have put my remark better.
I think not. The homely Saxon phrase is our literary dagger. Prince-like, you ride away from Markswade. Can I trust you not to stab a socially sick man? Why, it's a duty you owe to society, to weed out us.
I'm not a coward. How?
A little laughter, in your exuberance of health.
You may trust me not to tell tales.
Of what? Of whom?
Of here.
And what is there to tell of here?
Nothing.
But how your promise betrays a capacity for good-natured invention.
If I lie, call me out.
I don't deal in sentiment. I can't afford to be talked about otherwise than as I choose to be, already the Aunt Sally of the hour, having, under pressure of circumstances, resigned my office, dating my letters from the borders of the Chiltern Hundreds. I'm a poor politician, sir, and I must live.
I can't see that your family's affected.
With a penniless girl, you really should have been more circumspect.
I might ask to marry her.
My lord.
In the pause that ensues, he takes up the twist of brass to play with.
What should you say to that?
The silly child supposed she loved you.
Yes.
Is it much?
Lord John full in the other's face.
What about the appearances of blackmail?
Carnaby compressing his thin lips.
Do you care for my daughter?
I could, at a pinch.
Now, my lord, you are insolent.
Is this when we quarrel?
I think I'll challenge you.
That will look well.
You'll value that kiss when you've paid for it. kindly choose Tatton as your second. I want his tongue to wag both ways.
I was forgetting how it all began.
George will serve me, protesting. His principles are vile, but he has the education of a gentleman. Swords or swords? And at noon, shall we say? There's shade behind a certain barn, midway between this and Tatton's.
Lord John, not taking him seriously yet.
What if we both die horridly?
You are at liberty to make me a written apology.
A joke's a joke.
Carnaby deliberately strikes him in the face with a twist of brass.
That's enough.
Carnaby in explanatory apology.
My friend, you are so obtuse. Abud.
Mr. Leete, are you serious?
Perfectly serious. Let's go to bed. Abud, you can get to your work.
Wig in hand, Mr. Leete courteously conducts his guest towards the house. Abud returns to his tools and his morning's work. End of Act 1. Act 2 of The Marrying of Ann Leete by Harley Granville-Barker. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Shortly after midday, while the sun beats strongly upon the terrace, Abud is working dexterously at the rose trees. Dr. Remnant comes down the steps, hatted, and carrying a stick and a book. He is an elderly man with a kindly manner, type of the 18th century casuistical parson. On his way, he stops to say a word to the gardener.
Will it rain before nightfall?
About then, sir, I should say.
Down the other steps comes Mrs. Opie, a prim, decorous, but well-bred and unobjectionable woman. She is followed by Anne.
A good morning to you, parson.
And to you, Mrs. Opie, and to Miss Anne.
Good morning, Dr. Remnant.
To Abud.
Have you been here ever since?
I've had dinner, miss.
Abud's work takes him gradually out of sight.
We are but just breakfasted.
I surmise dissipation.
And to Mrs. Opie.
Thank you for waiting 5 hours.
It is my rule to breakfast with you.
Dr. Remnant exhibiting the book.
I am come to return and to borrow.
Show me.
Ballads by Robert Burns.
Anne taking it.
I'll put it back.
Mrs. Opie taking it from her.
I've never heard of him.
Oh, ma'am, a very vulgar poet.
George Leete comes quickly down the steps. George to Remnant.
How are you?
Yours, sir?
Anne?
Good morning, George.
Did you sleep well?
I always do, but I dreamt.
I must sit down for a minute.
Nodding.
Mrs. Opie?
I wish you a good morning, sir.
George to Anne.
Don't look so solemn.
Lady Cottesham comes quickly to the top of the steps.
Is Papa badly hurt?
Anne jumping up.
Oh, what has happened?
Not badly.
He won't see me.
His 3 children look at each other. Dr. Remnant tactfully.
May I go my ways to the library?
Please do, Dr. Remnant.
I flatly contradicted all that was being said in the village.
Thoughtful of you.
But tell me nothing.
Dr. Remnant bows formally and goes. George is about to speak when Sarah, with a look at Mrs. Opie, says,
George, hold your tongue.
Mrs. Opie with much hauteur.
I am in the way.
At this moment, Dimmuck, an old but unbenevolent-looking butler, comes to the top of the steps.
The master wants Mrs. Opie.
Thank you.
Your triumph.
Mrs. Opie is departing, radiant.
How was I to know you was in the garden?
I am sorry to have put you to the trouble of a search, Mr. Dimmuck.
He's in his room.
And he follows her towards the house.
Carp fought with him at 12 o'clock.
The other two cannot speak for amazement.
No.
Why, they didn't tell me and I didn't ask. Carp was laughing. Tatton chuckled. Afterwards.
What had he to do?
Carp's second.
Unaccountable children.
Feather parade. Throw in, parry quart, over the arm, put by, feint, flaconnade, and through his arm. Damn Daisy. The father didn't wince or say a word. I bound it up. The sight of blood makes me sick.
After a moment, Sarah turns to Anne.
Yes, and you've been a silly child.
Ah, give me a woman's guess, and the most unlikely reason to account for anything.
I hate that man. I'm glad Papa's not hurt. What about a surgeon?
No, you shall kiss the place well, and there'll be poetic justice done.
How did you all part?
With bows and without a word.
Coming home with him?
Not a word.
Papa is very clever, but I'm puzzled.
Something will happen next, no doubt.
Isn't this done with?
So it seems.
I should like to be told just what the game has been.
Bravo, Anne.
Tell me the rules for next time.
It would have been most advantageous for us to have formed an alliance with Lord John Carp, who stood here for his father and his father's party, now in opposition.
Look upon yourself not too seriously, Anne, as the instrument of political destiny.
I'm afraid I take in fresh ideas very slowly. Why has Papa given up the stamp office?
His colleagues wouldn't support him.
Why was that?
They disapproved of what he did.
Did he do right? Giving it up?
Yes.
We hope so. Time will tell. An irreverent quipster once named him Carnaby Leete.
I know.
I wonder if his true enemies think him wise to have dropped off the stamp office.
Has he quarrelled with Sir Charles?
Politically.
Isn't that awkward for you?
Not a bit.
Hear a statement that includes our lives. Mark Swade goes at his death. See revisionary mortgage. The income's an annuity now. The cash in the house will be ours. The debts are paid. At last.
And there remains me.
Bad grammar. Meanwhile, our father is a tongue which is worth buying, but I don't think he ought to go over to the enemy for the second time.
One party is as good as another. Each works for the same end, I should hope.
I won't argue about it.
I suppose that a woman's profession is marriage.
My lord has departed.
There'll be others to come. I'm not afraid of being married.
What did Papa want Mrs. Opie for?
There'll be a great many things I shall want to know about men now.
Wisdom cometh with sorrow. Oh, my sister.
I believe you two are both about as selfish as you can be.
I am an egotist. With attachments.
Make use of me.
Anne, you marry when you marry. To please yourself.
There's much in life that I don't like, Sally.
There's much more that you will.
I think we three have never talked together before.
Abud, who has been in sight on the terrace for a few moments, now comes down the steps.
May I make so bold, sir, as to ask how is Mrs. George Leete?
She was well when I last heard.
Thank you, sir.
And he returns to his work.
I wonder if it will be a boy or a girl.
Poor, weak woman.
Be grateful to her.
A baby is a wonderful thing.
Babyhood in the abstract. Beautiful.
Even kittens.
She stops, and then in rather childish embarrassment moves away from them.
Don't shudder, George.
I have no wish to be a father. Why?
It's a vulgar responsibility.
My wayside flower.
Why pick it?
Sarah, I love my wife.
That's easily said.
She should be here.
George, you married to please yourself.
By custom, her rank is my own.
Does she still drop her H's?
Dolly.
Pretty name.
Dolly aspires to be one of us.
Childbearing makes these women blousy.
Oh, heaven!
Anne calling to Abud on the terrace.
Finished today.
She stops, seeing Mr. Tetgeen standing at the top of the steps leading from the house. This is an intensely respectable, self-contained looking lawyer, but a man of the world, too.
Lady Cottesham.
Sir?
My name is Tetgeen.
Mr. Tetgeen, how do you do?
The household appeared to be in some confusion, and I took the liberty to be my own messenger. I am anxious to speak with you.
Anne, dear, ask if Papa will see you now.
Dimmuck appears.
The master wants you, Miss Anne.
Ask Papa if he'll see me soon.
Anne goes toward the house.
Dimmuck, Mr. Tetgeen has been left to find his own way here.
I couldn't help it, my lady.
And he follows Anne.
Our father is confined to his room.
By your leave.
Then George takes himself off up the steps and out of sight. The old lawyer bows to Lady Cottesham, who regards him steadily.
From Sir Charles, a talking machine.
Please sit.
He sits carefully upon the rim of the fountain, she upon the seat opposite. Sarah, glancing over her shoulder.
Will you talk nonsense until the gardener is out of hearing? He is on his way. Have you had a tiring journey?
Thank you, no. By the night coach to Reading, and thence I have walked.
The country is pretty, is it not?
It compares favourably with other parts.
Do you travel much, Mr. Tetgeen? He is gone.
Mr. Tetgeen, deliberately and sharpening his tone ever so little.
Sir Charles does not wish to petition for a divorce.
Sarah, controlling even her sense of humour.
I have no desire to jump over the moon.
His scruples are religious. The case would be weak upon some important points, and there has been no public scandal. At the worst, very little.
My good manners are, I trust, irreproachable, and you may tell Sir Charles that my conscience is my own.
Your husband's in the matter of...
Please say the word.
Pardon me. Not upon mere suspicion.
Now, is it good policy to suspect what is incapable of proof?
I advise Sir Charles that, should you come to an open fight, he can afford to lose.
And I have no right to suspicions.
Certainly. Are they of use to you?
I have been a tolerant wife, expecting toleration.
Sir Charles is anxious to take into consideration any complaints you may have to make against him.
I complain if he complains of me.
For the first time, I think, formally.
Why not have come to me?
Sir Charles is busy.
Sarah, disguising a little spasm of pain.
Shall we get to business?
Mr. Tetgeen now takes a moment to find his phrase.
I don't know the man's name.
This, surely, is how you might address a seduced housemaid.
But Sir Charles and he, I understand, have talked the matter over.
The shock of this brings Sarah to her feet, white with anger.
Divorce me!
Mr. Tetgeen sharply.
Is there ground for it?
Sarah, with a magnificent recovery of self-control.
I won't tell you that.
I have said we have no case. That is to say, we don't want one. But any information is a weapon in store.
You did quite right to insult me.
As a rule, I despise such methods.
It's a lie that they met, those two men.
It may be.
It must be.
I have Sir Charles' word.
Now he takes from his pocket some notes, putting on his spectacles to read them.
What's this? A written lecture?
We propose, first, that the present complete severance of conjugal relations shall continue. Secondly, that Lady Cottesham shall be at liberty to remove from South Audley Street and Ringham Castle all personal and private effects, excepting those family jewels which have merely been considered her property. Thirdly, Lady Cottesham shall undertake, formally and in writing, not to molest, a legal term, Sir Charles Cottesham.
Her handkerchief is dropped. Here he picks it up and restores it to her.
Allow me, my lady.
I thank you.
Mr. Tetgeen continuing.
Fourthly, Lady Cottesham shall undertake, etc., not to inhabit or frequent the city and towns of London, Brighthelmston, Bath, the Tunbridge Wells, and York. Fifthly, Sir Charles Cottesham will, in acknowledgment of the maintenance of this agreement, allow Lady C. the sum of £250 per annum, which sum he considers sufficient for the upkeep of a small genteel establishment. Use of the house known as Pater House, situate some 17 miles from the manor of Bartlemere Street, Yorkshire. Coals from the mine adjoining, and from the home farm, milk, butter, and eggs.
Then he finds a further note.
Lady Cottesham is not to play cards.
I am a little fond of play.
There is no question of jointure.
None, Mr. Tetgeen. I love my husband.
My lady, I will mention it.
Such a humorous answer to this. No, don't. What is important? Bread and butter. And eggs. Do I take this?
Mr. Tetgeen handing her the paper.
Please.
Sarah with a ghost of a smile.
I take it badly.
Mr. Tetgeen courteously capping her jest.
I take my leave.
This doesn't call for serious notice. I've done nothing legal by accepting it.
There's no law in the matter. It's one of policy.
I might bargain for a bigger income.
Mr. Tetgeen bows.
On the whole, I'd rather be divorced.
Sir Charles detests scandal.
Besides, there's no case. Is there?
Sir Charles congratulates himself.
Sir Charles had best not bully me so politely. Tell him.
My lady.
I will not discuss this impertinence. Did those two men meet and talk, chat together? What do you think of that?
'Twas very practical. I know that the woman is somehow the outcast.
A bad woman, an idle woman. But I have tried to do so much that lay to my hands without ever questioning. Thank you. I don't want this retailed to my husband. You'll take a glass of wine before you go?
Port is grateful.
She takes from her dress 2 sealed letters.
Will you give that to Sir Charles? A letter that he wrote to me, which I did not open. This my answer, which I did not send.
He takes the one letter courteously, the other she puts back.
I'm such a coward, Mr. Tetgeen.
May I say how sorry?
Thank you.
And let me apologize for having expressed one opinion of my own.
He wants to get rid of me. He's a bit afraid of me, you know, because I fight. And my weapons are all my own. This'll blow over.
Mr. Tetgeen, with a shake of the head.
You are to take this offer as final.
Beyond this?
As I hinted, I am prepared to advise legal measures.
I could blow it over, but I won't, perhaps. I must smile at my husband's consideration in suppressing, even to you, the man's name. Butter and eggs, and milk. I should grow fat.
Anne appears suddenly.
We go to Brighton tomorrow.
And she comes excitedly to her sister.
Was that duel a stroke of genius?
All sorts of things are to happen.
Sarah turning from her to Mr. Tetgeen.
And you'll walk as far as Reading?
Dear me, yes.
Sarah to Anne.
I'll come back.
Sarah takes Mr. Tetgeen towards the house, and seats herself. After a moment, Lord John Carp, his clothes dusty with some writing, appears from the other quarter. She looks up to find him gazing at her.
Anne, I've ridden back to see you.
Anne, after a moment.
We're coming to Brighton tomorrow.
Good.
Papa's not dead.
Lord John, with equal cheerfulness.
That's good.
And he said we should be seeing more of you.
Here I am. I love you, Anne.
He goes on his knees.
Do you want to marry me?
Yes.
Thank you very much. It'll be very convenient for us all. Won't you get up?
At your feet.
I like it.
Give me your hand.
No.
You're beautiful.
I don't think so. You don't think so.
I do think so.
I should like to say I don't love you.
Last night you kissed me.
Do get up, please.
As you wish.
Now he sits by her.
Last night you were nobody in particular. To me.
I love you.
Please don't. I can't think clearly.
Look at me.
I'm sure I don't love you, because you're making me feel very uncomfortable, and that wouldn't be so.
Then we'll think.
Papa, perhaps you'd rather not talk about Papa.
Give yourself to me.
Anne, drawing away from him.
4 words. There ought to be more in a sentence. It's ridiculous. I want a year to think about its meaning. Don't speak.
Papa joins our party.
That's what we're after, thank you.
I loathe politics.
Tell me something against them.
In my opinion, your father's not a much bigger blackguard, I beg your pardon, than the rest of us.
Miserable sinners.
Your father turns his coat. Well?
I see nothing at all in that.
What's right and what's wrong?
Papa's right, for the present. When shall we be married?
Tomorrow.
Anne, startled.
If you knew that it isn't easy for me to be practical, you wouldn't make fun.
Why not tomorrow?
Papa.
Papa says yes, suppose.
I'm very young. Not to speak of clothes, I must have lots of new dresses.
Ask me for them.
Why do you want to marry me?
I love you.
It suddenly occurs to me that sounds unpleasant.
I love you.
Out of place.
I love you.
What if Papa were to die?
I want you.
I'm nothing. I'm nobody. I'm part of my family.
I want you.
Won't you please forget last night?
I want you. Look straight at me.
She looks and stays fascinated.
If I say now that I love you...
I know it.
And love me?
I suppose so.
Make sure.
But I hate you too. I know that.
Shall I kiss you?
Anne, helplessly.
Yes.
He kisses her full on the lips.
I can't hate you enough.
Lord John, triumphantly.
Speak the truth now.
I feel very degraded.
Nonsense.
Anne, wretchedly.
This is one of the things which don't matter.
Ain't you to be mine?
You want the right to behave like that as well as the power?
You shall command me.
Anne, with a poor laugh.
I rather like this in a way.
Little coquette.
It does tickle my vanity.
For a moment he sits looking at her, then shakes himself to his feet.
Now I must go.
Yes, I want to think.
For heaven's sake, no.
I came this morning straight to where we were last night.
As I hung about the garden, my heart was beating.
I shall like you better when you're not here.
We're to meet in Brighton?
I'm afraid so.
Goodbye.
There's just a silly sort of attraction between certain people, I believe.
Can you look me in the eyes and say you don't love me?
If I looked you in the eyes, you'd frighten me again. I can say anything.
You're a deep child.
George Leete appears on the terrace.
My lord.
Lord John, cordially.
My dear Leete.
No, I am not surprised to see you.
George, things are happening.
Shake hands.
I will not.
Lord John asked me to be married to him. Shake hands.
Why did you fight?
Why did you fight?
Lord John, shrugging.
Your father struck me.
Now you've hurt him. That's fair.
Then the two men do shake hands, not heartily.
We've trapped you, my lord.
I know what I want. I love your sister.
I don't like you, but if you're good, and I'm good, we shall get on.
Why shouldn't one marry politically?
Lord John in Anne's ear.
I love you.
No, 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 no.
Discovering in this an echo of her father, she stopped short.
We're a cold-blooded family.
I don't think so.
I married for love.
Who doesn't? But of course, there should be other reasons.
You won't receive my wife.
Here's your sister.
Lady Cottesham comes from the direction of the house.
Back again.
You see.
From the other side appears Mr. Tatton.
As you all seem to be here, I don't mind interrupting.
George hailing him.
Well, neighbour.
Come, come, what a little fighting, more or less.
Bravo, English sentiment. Relieves a deal of awkwardness.
The two shake hands. Sarah, who by this has reached Lord John.
And back so soon?
Lord John asks me to marry him.
Yes.
I guessed so. Give me a bit of romance.
Sarah suavely.
This is perhaps a little sudden, my dear Lord John. Papa may naturally be a little shocked.
Not at all, Sarah.
How's the wound?
Not serious. Nothing's serious.
You are very masterful, wooing sword in hand.
George and I have explained to Lord John that we are all most anxious to marry me to him, and he doesn't mind.
Being made a fool of. I
will like you.
Charming cynicism, my dear Sarah.
Oh, Lord.
And to her affianced.
Goodbye now.
When do I see you?
Papa says soon.
Very soon, please. Tatton, my friend. Brighton's no nearer.
Lady Cottesham, Miss Leete, I kiss your hands.
Lord John ebulliently clapping George on the back.
Look more pleased.
Then he bends over Lady Cottesham's hand.
Lady Charlie, my service to you all. Anne?
And he takes Anne's hand to kiss.
If I can think better of this, I shall. Goodbye.
She turns away from him. He stands for a moment considering her, but follows Tatton away through the orchard. George and Sarah are watching their sister, who then comments on her little affair with life.
I'm growing up.
Then with a sudden tremor.
Sally, don't let me be forced to marry.
Force of circumstances, my dear Anne.
Outside things. Why couldn't I run away from this garden and over the hills? I suppose there's something on the other side of the hills.
You'd find yourself there. And circumstances.
So I'm trapped as well as that Lord John.
What's the injury?
I'm taken by surprise, and I know I'm ignorant, and I think I'm learning things backwards.
You must cheer up and say, John's not a bad sort.
A man of his age is a young man.
I wish you wouldn't recommend him to me.
Let's think of Brighton. What about your gowns?
I've nothing to wear.
We'll talk to Papa.
The war purse is always a long one.
George, be one of us for a minute.
but I want to look on too, and laugh.
Sarah caustically.
Yes, that's your privilege, except occasionally.
Then to her sister.
I wish you all the happiness of courtship days.
Arcadian expression.
I believe it means being kissed. Often.
Have you not a touch of romance in you, little girl?
Am I not like Mr. Dan Tatton? He kisses dairymaids and servants and all the farmers' daughters. I beg your pardon, George.
George nettled.
I'll say to you, Anne, that in all essentials one woman is as good as another.
That is not so in the polite world.
When you consider it, no one lives in the polite world.
Do they come outside for air sooner or later?
Sarah briskly.
3 best dresses you must have, and something very gay if you're to go near the pavilion.
You're coming to Brighton, Sally?
No.
Why not?
I don't wish to meet my husband.
That man was his lawyer.
The political difference, Sally?
Just that.
Then with a deft turn of the subject.
I don't say that yours is a pretty face, but I should think you would have charm.
For fashion's sake, cultivate sweetness.
You dance as well as they know how to in Reading.
Yes, I can twiddle my feet.
Do you like dancing?
I'd sooner walk.
What? And get somewhere?
Here's George laughing.
He's out of it.
Are you happy, George?
Alas, Dolly's disgraceful ignorance of etiquette damns us both from the beautiful drawing-rooms.
That laugh is forced, but how can you look on?
There is a slight pause in their talk. Then,
He'll bully me with love.
Your husband will give you just what you ask for.
I hate myself too. I want to take people mentally.
You want a new world, you new woman.
And I'm a good bit frightened of myself.
We have our places to fill in this. My dear child, leave futile questions alone.
Neither have I any good advice to give you.
I think happiness is a thing one talks too much about.
Dimmuck appears, and by now Abud's work has brought him back to the terrace.
The master would like to see your ladyship now.
I'll say we have a visitor, yes.
And you've had a visitor, Sarah?
Papa will know.
Is he in a questioning mood?
I always tell everything.
It saves time.
She departs towards the house.
Mr. George.
What is it?
He said no to a doctor when I haven't even mentioned the matter. Had I better send?
Do, if you care to waste the doctor's time.
Dimmuck gives an offended sniff and follows Lady Cottesham.
I could sit here for days. George, I don't think I quite believe in anything I've been told yet.
What's that man's name?
John. John is a common name. John Abud.
Abud?
Sir?
Come here.
Abud obediently walks towards his young master and stands before him.
Why did you ask after the health of Mrs. George Leete?
We courted once.
George, after a moment.
Listen, Anne. Do you hate me, John Abud?
No, sir.
You're a fine-looking fellow. How old are you?
27, sir.
Is once long ago?
2 years gone.
Did Mrs. Leete quarrel with you?
No, sir.
Pray tell me more.
I was beneath her.
But you're a fine-looking fellow.
Farmer Crow wouldn't risk his daughter being unhappy.
But she was beneath me.
That was another matter, sir.
I don't think you intend to be sarcastic.
And, being near time for the first time, sir, I wanted to know if she was in danger of dying yet.
Every precaution has been taken. A nurse, there is a physician near. I need not tell you, but I do tell you.
Thank you, sir.
I take great interest in my wife.
We all do, sir.
Was it ambition that you courted her?
I thought to start housekeeping.
Did you aspire to rise socially?
I wanted a wife to keep house, sir.
Are you content?
I think so, sir.
With your humble position?
I'm a gardener, and there'll always be gardens.
Frustrated affections, I beg your pardon. To have been crossed in love should make you bitter and ambitious.
My father was a gardener, and my son will be a gardener if he's no worse a man than I, and no better.
Are you married?
No, sir.
Are you going to be married?
Not especially, sir.
Yes, you must marry. Some decent woman. We want gardeners.
Do you want me any more now, sir?
You have interested me. You can go back to your work.
Abud obeys. George, almost to himself.
I am hardly human.
He slowly moves away and out of sight.
John Abud.
He comes back and stands before her too.
I am very sorry for you.
I'm very much obliged to you, miss.
Both those sayings are quite meaningless. Say something true about yourself.
I'm not sorry for myself.
I won't tell. It's very clear you ought to be in a despairing state. Don't stand in the sun with your hat off.
Abud, putting on his hat.
Thank you, miss.
Have you nearly finished the rose trees?
I must work till late this evening.
Weren't you ambitious for Dolly's sake?
She thought me good enough.
I'd have married her.
She was ambitious for me.
And are you frightened of the big world?
Fine things dazzle me sometimes.
But gardening is all that you're fit for?
I'm afraid so, miss.
But it's great to be a gardener, to sow seeds and to watch flowers grow and to cut away dead things.
Yes, miss.
And you're in the fresh air all day.
That's very healthy.
Are you very poor?
I get my meals in the house.
Rough clothes last a long time.
I've saved money.
Where do you sleep?
At Mrs. Hart's, at a cottage. It's a mile off.
And you want no more than food and clothes and a bed, and you earn all that with your hands.
The less a man wants, miss, the better.
But you mean to marry?
Yes, I've saved money.
Whom will you marry? Would you rather not say? Perhaps you don't know yet.
It's all luck what sort of a maid a man gets fond of. It won't be a widow.
Be careful, John Abud.
No, I shan't be careful.
You'll do very wrong to be made a fool of.
I'm safe, miss. I've no eye for a pretty face.
Dimmuck arrives asthmatically at the top of the steps.
Where's Mr. George? Here's a messenger come post.
Find him, Abud.
Abud to Dimmuck.
From Dolly?
Speak respectfully.
It is from his wife?
Go find him.
And as Abud is immovable.
Dimmuck, tell me about Mrs. George.
She's doing well, miss.
Abud shouting joyfully now.
Mr. George! Mr. George!
A boy or a girl, Dimmuck?
Yes, miss.
Mr. George! Mr. George!
Ecod, is he somewhere else?
Dimmuck, somewhat excited himself, returns to the house.
George!
Mr. George! Mr. George!
George comes slowly along the terrace, in his hand an open book, which some people might suppose he was reading. He speaks with studied calm.
You are very excited, my good man.
She's brought you a child, sir.
Your child?
Certainly.
Thank God, sir.
I will if I please.
And she's doing well?
There's a messenger come post.
To be sure. It might have been bad news.
And slowly he crosses the garden toward the house. Abud, suddenly, beyond all patience.
Run, damn you!
George makes one supreme effort to maintain his dignity, but fails utterly. He gasps out,
Yes, I will.
And then runs off as hard as he can. Abud in ecstasy.
This is good. Oh, Dolly and God, this is good.
Anne, round-eyed.
I wonder that you can be pleased.
Abud, apologizing without apology.
It's life.
Anne, struck.
Yes, it is.
And she goes toward the house, thinking this over. End of Act 2. Act 3 of The Marrying of Anne Leete by Harley Granville-Barker. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. It is near to sunset. The garden is shadier than before. Abud is still working. Carnaby Leete comes from the house, followed by Dr. Remnant. He wears his right arm in a sling. His face is flushed, his speech rapid.
Parson, you didn't drink enough wine. Damn, the wine was good.
I am very grateful for an excellent dinner.
A good dinner, sir, is the crown of a good day's work.
It may also be a comfort in affliction. Our philosophy does ill, Mr. Leete, when it despises the more simple means of contentment.
And which will be the better lover of a woman, a hungry or a well-fed man?
A good meal digests love with it. For what is love but a food to live by? But a hungry love will ofttimes devour its owner.
Admirable. Give me a man in love to deal with. Fool, avez-vous?
Speak Latin, Greek, or Hebrew to me, Mr. Leete.
French is a language of little things. My poor France. Ours is a little world, parson. A man may hold it here.
His open hand.
Lord John Carp's a fine fellow.
Son of a duke.
And I command to you the originality of his return. At 12 we fight. At 1:30 he proposes marriage to my daughter. Would you see him humbly on his knees? Will there be rain, I wonder?
We need rain, Abud.
Badly, sir.
Do you want a wet journey tomorrow? Where's Sarah?
Lady Cottesham's taking tea.
Carnaby to Abud with a sudden start.
And why the devil didn't you marry my daughter-in-law? My own gardener?
George appears, dressed for riding.
Goodbye, sir, for the present.
Boots and breeches.
You shouldn't be about in the evening air with a green wound in your arm. You drank wine at dinner. Be careful, sir.
Off to your wife and the expected?
Yes, sir.
Riding to Watford?
From there, alongside the north coach, if I'm in time.
Don't founder my horse. Will you leave the glorious news with your grandfather at Wickham?
I won't fail to.
Then to Abud.
We've been speaking of you.
It was never any secret, sir.
Don't apologize.
Soon after this, Abud passes out of sight.
Nature's an encumbrance to us, parson.
One disapproves of flesh uninspired.
She allows you no amusing hobbies, always takes you seriously.
Goodbye, parson.
Dr. Remnant, as he bows.
You're most obedient.
And you trifle with damnable democracy, with pretty theories of the respect due to womanhood, and now the result? Hark at it squalling.
Being 50 miles off, might not one say? The cry of a newborn.
Ill-bred babies squall. There's no poetic glamour in the world will beautify an undesired infant. George says so.
I did say so.
I feel the whole matter deeply.
George half laughs.
George, after days of irritability, brought to bed of a smile. That's a home thrust of a metaphor.
George laughs again.
Twins?
Yes, a boy and a girl. I'm the father of a boy and a girl.
Carnaby, in indignant horror.
No one of you dared tell me that much.
Sarah and Anne come from the house.
You could have asked me for news of your grandchildren.
Twins is an insult.
But you look very cheerful, George.
I am content.
I'm surprised.
I am surprised.
Now what names for them?
No family names, please.
We'll wait for a dozen years or so, then let them choose their own.
But, sir, christening will demand...
Your son should have had my name, sir.
I know the rule, as I have my grandfather's, which I take no pride in.
George!
Not to say that it sounds his, not mine.
Our hopes of you were high once.
Sarah, may I kiss you?
He kisses her cheek.
Let me hear what you decide to do.
The begetting of you, sir, was a waste of time.
George, quite pleasantly.
Don't say that.
At the top of the steps, Anne is waiting for him.
Thank you, Sister Anne.
Why didn't you leave us weeks ago?
Why?
They pace away arm in arm. Carnaby bitterly.
Glad to go. Brighton, sir.
No, I shall not come, Papa.
Coward.
Then to Remnant.
Good night.
Dr. Remnant, covering the insolent dismissal.
With your kind permission, I will take my leave.
Then he bows to Sarah.
Lady Cottesham.
Sarah, curtsying.
Dr. Remnant, I am yours.
Carnaby, sitting by the fountain, stamping his foot.
Oh, this cracked earth. Will it rain? Will it rain?
I doubt now. That cloud has passed.
Soft, pellucid rain. There's a good word. I'm not at all sure what it means.
Per lucere. Letting light through.
Remnant leaves them.
Soft, pellucid rain. Thank you. Brighton, Sarah.
Anne needs new clothes.
See to it.
I shall not be there.
She turns from him.
Pretty climax to a quarrel.
Not a quarrel.
A political difference.
Don't look so ferocious.
My arm is in great pain, and the wine's in my head.
Won't you go to bed?
I'm well enough to travel. This marriage makes us safe, Sarah, an anchor in each camp. There's a mixed metaphor.
If you'll have my advice, Papa, you'll keep those plans clear from Anne's mind.
John Carp is so much clay, a man of 40, ignorant of himself.
But if the Duke will not...
The Duke hates a scandal.
Does he detest scandal?
The girl is well-bred and harmless. Why publicly quarrel with John and incense her old brute of a father? There's the Duke in a score of words. He'll take a little time to think it out, so...
And I say, do you get on the right side of the Duke once again. That's what we've worked for. And leave these two alone.
Am I to lose my daughter?
Papa, your food's intrigue.
Scold at society, and what's the use?
We're over-civilized.
Anne rejoins them now. The twilight is gathering.
My mother's very old. Your grandfather's younger, and 79. He swears I'll never come into the title. There's little else.
You're feverish. Why are you saying this?
Anne, George via Wickham Court. Sir George Leete, Baronet, Justice of the Peace, Deputy Lieutenant. The thoughts tumbled. And I first saw your mother in this garden. There.
Was she like me?
My age, when she married.
She was not beautiful, and then she died.
Mr. Tatton thinks it a romantic garden.
Carnaby, pause.
Do you hear the wind sighing through that tree?
The air's quite still.
I hear myself sighing when I first saw your mother in this garden. That's how it was done.
For a woman must marry.
Carnaby rises.
You all take to it as ducks to water. But apple sauce is quite correct. I must not mix metaphors.
Mrs. Opie comes from the house.
Your supper done, Mrs. Opie?
I eat little in the evening.
I believe that saves digestion.
Anne, do you need me more tonight?
Not any more.
Anne, there is gossip among the servants about a wager.
Mrs. Opie, that was... Yesterday.
Anne, I should be glad to be able to contradict a reported embrace.
I was kissed.
I am shocked.
Mrs. Opie, is it possible that all these years I've been nourishing a prude in my back drawing-room?
I presume I am discharged of Anne's education, but as the salaried mistress of your household, Mr. Leete, I am grieved not to be able to deny such a rumour to your servants.
She sails back, righteously indignant.
Call out that you're marrying the wicked man. Comfort her.
Mrs. Opie.
Consider that existence. An old maid. So far as we know, brevet rank. Mrs. Not pleasant.
She wants nothing better at her age.
How forgetful.
Carnaby, the force of the phrase growing.
Bryson, Sarah.
Now you've both read the love letter which Tetgeen brought me.
Come to Bryson.
Come to Brighton, Sally?
No, I have been thinking. I think I will accept the income, the house, coals, butter and eggs.
I give you a fortnight to bring your husband to his knees, to your feet.
I'm not sure that I could. My marriage has come naturally to an end.
Sarah, don't annoy me.
Papa, you have joined my bridegroom's political party. Now you see fit to leave it.
She glances at Anne, who gives no sign, however.
What have you been doing in 10 years?
Waiting for this to happen, now I come to think.
Have you the impudence to tell me that you never cared for your husband?
I was caught by the first few kisses, but he...
Has he ever been unkind to you?
Never. He's a gentleman through and through. Quite charming to live with.
I see what more you expect. He neither drinks, nor... No one even could suppose you're leaving him.
No, I'm disgraced.
A fight for your honour.
You surprise me sometimes by breaking out into cant phrases.
What is more useful in the world than our honour?
I think we never had any. We.
Give me more details. Tell me, who is this man?
I'm innocent, if that were all.
Sally, what do they say you've done?
I cry out like any poor girl.
There must be no doubt that you're innocent. Why not go to force Charles into court?
My innocence is not of the sort which shows up well.
Hold publicity in reserve. No fear of the two men arranging to meet, is there?
They've met, and they chatted about me.
Carnaby, after a moment.
There's sound humour in that.
I shall feel able to laugh at them both from Yorkshire.
God forbid. Come to Brighton. We'll rally Charles no end.
Papa, I know there's nothing to be done.
Coward.
Besides, I don't think I want to go back to my happiness.
They are silent for a little.
How still? Look, he's falling already. Can that man hear what we're saying?
Sarah to Anne.
Can Abud over here?
I've never talked secrets in this garden before today.
Raising her voice but a very little.
Can you hear me, Abud?
No reply comes.
Evidently not. His brain's shown in a trifle.
Does your arm pain you much?
Sarah, this man that you're fond of and that's not your husband is not by any chance Lord John Carp.
No.
Nothing would surprise me.
You are witty, but a little young to be so hard.
Keep to your innocent thoughts.
I must study politics.
We'll stop talking of this.
No. Let me listen. Quite quietly.
Let her listen. She's going to be married.
Good luck, Anne.
I have great hopes of Anne.
I hope she may be heartless. To be heartless is to be quite safe.
Now we detect the taste of sour grapes in your mouth.
Butter and eggs.
We must all start early in the morning. Sarah will take you, Anne, round the Python shops. Fine shops. You shall have the money.
I will not come with you.
Carnaby, vexedly.
How absurd! How ridiculous to persist in your silly sentiment.
Sarah, her voice rising.
I'm tired of that world, which goes on, and there's no dying. One grows into a ghost, visible, then invisible. I'm glad paint has gone out of fashion. The painted ghost were very ill to see.
Discovered civilization?
Look ahead for me.
Banished to a hole in the damned provinces. But you're young yet, you're charming, you're the wife, and the honest wife of one of the country's best men. My head aches. Do you despise good fortune's gifts? Keep as straight in your place in the world as you can. A monthly packet of books to Yorkshire. No, you never were fond of reading. You'd play patience, cultivate chess problems, kill yourself.
When one world fails, take another.
You have no more right to commit suicide than to desert the society you were born into. My head aches.
George is happy.
Do you dare to think so?
No, it's a horrible marriage.
He's losing refinement. Mark me, he no longer polishes his nails.
But there are the children now.
You never have wanted children.
I don't want a little child.
She to be Lady Leete. Some day. Soon. What has he done for this family?
I'll come with you. You are clever, Papa, and I know just what to say to Charles.
Carnaby, with a curious change of tone.
If you study anatomy, you'll find that the brain, as it works, pressing forward the eyes. Thought is painful. Never be defeated. Chapter the latest. The tickling of the carp. My throat is dry. Shall I drink that water?
No, I wouldn't.
Not out of my hand?
Anne, speaking in a strange, quiet voice after her long silence.
I will not come to Brighton with you.
Very dry.
You must go back, Sally.
Carnaby, as he looks at her, standing stiffly.
Now, what is Anne's height? 5 feet?
Sally must go back, for she belongs to it. But I'll stay here where I belong.
We have spoken 3 times, and the words are jumbling in at my ears meaninglessly. I certainly took too much wine at dinner, or else... Yes, Sally goes back, and you'll go forward. Who stays here? Don't burlesque your sister. What's in the air? What disease is this?
I mean to disobey you, to stay here, never to be unhappy.
So pleased.
I want to be an ordinary woman, not clever, not fortunate.
I can't hear.
Not clever. I don't believe in you, Papa.
I exist. I'm very sorry.
I won't be married to any man. I refuse to be tempted. I won't see him again.
Yes. It's raining.
Raining?
Don't you stop it raining.
Anne, in the same level tones, to her sister now, who otherwise would turn alarmed to their father.
And I curse you, because we, being sisters, I suppose, I am much what you were about to be married, and I think, Sally, you'd have cursed your present self. I could become all that you are and more, but I don't choose.
Anne, what is to become of you?
Big drops, big drops.
At this moment, Abud is passing towards the house, his work finished.
John Abud, you mean to marry. When you marry, will you marry me?
A blank silence, into which breaks Carnaby's sick voice.
Take me indoors. I heard you ask the gardener to marry you.
I asked him.
I heard you say that you asked him. Take me in, but not out of the rain.
Look, he's straight-limbed and clear-eyed, and I'm a woman.
Anne, are you mad?
If we two were alone here in this garden and everyone else in the world were dead, what would you answer?
Abud, still amazed.
Why, yes.
Then that's settled. Palooza.
He attempts to rise, but staggers backwards and forwards. Sarah goes to him, alarmed.
Papa, there's no rain yet.
Hush, I'm dead.
Anne, her nerves failing her.
Oh.
Abud, don't ever speak of this.
No, my lady.
Anne, with a final effort.
I mean it all. Wait 3 months.
Help me up steps, son-in-law.
Carnaby has started to grope his way indoors, but he reels and falls helpless.
I'll carry him.
Throwing down his tools, Abud lifts the frail sick man and carries him towards the house. Sarah follows, Anne sobbing a little and weary.
Such a long day it has been, now ending.
She follows too. End of Act 3. Act 4 of The Marrying of Ann Leete by Harley Granville-Barker. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The hall at Markswade is square. In decoration, strictly 18th century. The floor is polished. Then comes 6 feet of soberly painted wainscot, and above, the greenish-blue and yellowish-green wall painted into panels. At intervals are low-relief pilasters. The capitals of these are gilded. The ceiling is white, and in the center of it there is a frosted glass dome through which a dull light struggles. 2 sides only of the hall are seen. In the corner is a hat-stand, and on it are many cloaks and hats, and beneath it several pairs of very muddy boots. In the middle of the left-hand wall are the double doors of the dining room, led up to by 3 or 4 stairs with balusters, and on either side, standing against the wall, long, formal, straight-backed sofas. In the middle of the right-hand wall is the front door. Glass double doors can be seen, and there is evidently a porch beyond. On the left of the front door, a small window. On the right, a large fireplace, in which a large fire is roaring. Over the front door, a clock, the hands pointing to 1:30. Over the fireplace, a family portrait, Temp Queen Anne. Below this, a blunderbuss and several horse pistols. Above the sofa, full-length family portraits, Temp George I. Before the front door, a wooden screen of lighter wood than the wainscot, and in the middle of it a small glass panel. Before this, a heavy square table on which are whips and sticks, a hat or two, and brushes. By the table, a wooden chair. On either side of the fire stand tall closed-in armchairs, and between the fireplace and the door a small red baize screen. When the dining-room doors are thrown open, another wooden screen is to be seen. There are a few rugs on the floor, formally arranged. Mrs. Opie stands in the middle of the hall, holding out a woman's brown cloak. She drops one side to fetch out her handkerchief and apply it to her eye. Dimmuck comes in by the front door, which he carefully closes behind him. He is wrapped in a hooded cloak and carries a pair of boots and a newspaper. The boots he arranges to warm before the fire. Then he spreads the Chronicle newspaper upon the arm of a chair, then takes off his cloak and hangs it upon a peg close to the door. Dimmuck.
Mrs. Opie, will you look to it's not scorching?
Mrs. Opie still mops her eyes. Dimmuck goes towards the dining-room door, but turns.
Will you kindly see that the Chronicle newspaper does not burn?
I was crying.
I'll leave this to tomorrow se'night. Thankful, ma'am. to have given notice in a dignified manner.
I understand. Those persons at table.
You give notice.
Mr. Dimmuck, this is my home.
Lord Arthur Carp comes out of the dining room. He is a thinner and more earnest-looking edition of his brother. Mrs. Opie turns a chair and hangs the cloak to warm before the fire, and then goes into the dining room.
My chaise round?
But I've just ordered it, my lord. Your lordship's man has given me your boots.
Does it snow?
Rather rain than snow.
Lord Arthur takes up the newspaper.
Yesterday's, my lord.
I've seen it. The mails don't hurry hereabouts. Can I be in London by the morning?
I should say you might be, my lord.
Lord Arthur sits by the fire, while Dimmuck takes off his pumps and starts to put on his boots.
Is this a horse called Ronald?
Which horse, my lord?
Which I'm to take back with me. My brother left here. I brought the mare he borrowed.
I remember, my lord. I'll inquire.
Tell Parker.
Your lordship's man?
He'd better ride the beast.
Sarah comes out of the dining room. He stands up, one boot, one shoe.
Please put on the other.
Thank you. I am in haste.
To depart before the bride's departure?
Does the bride go with the bridegroom?
She goes away.
I shall never see such a thing again.
I think this entertainment is unique.
Any commissions in town?
Why can't you stay to travel with us tomorrow and talk business to Papa by the way?
Dimmuck, carrying the pumps, and after putting on his cloak, goes out through the front door. When it is closed, her voice changes.
Why, Arthur?
He does not answer. Then Mrs. Opie comes out of the dining room to fetch the cloak. The two, with an effort, reconstruct their casual, disjointed conversation.
Before the bride's departure?
Does the bride go away with the bridegroom?
She goes.
I shall never see such an entertainment again.
We are quite unique.
Any commissions in town?
Is she to go soon, too, Mrs. Opie?
It is arranged they are to walk. In this weather? 10 miles? To the house?
Cottage.
Hut.
Mrs. Opie takes the cloak into the dining room. Then Sarah comes a little towards Lord Arthur, but waits for him to speak. Lord Arthur, a little awkwardly.
You are not looking well.
To our memory, and beyond your little chat with my husband about me, I want to speak an epitaph.
Charlie Cottesham behaved most honourably.
And I think you did. Why have you not let me tell you so in your ear till now, today?
Sarah, we had a narrow escape from...
How's your wife?
Well, thank you.
Nervous, surely, at your travelling in winter?
I was so glad to receive a casual invitation from you and to come casually.
50 miles.
Your father has been ill.
Very ill through the autumn.
Do you think he suspects us?
I shouldn't care to peep into Papa's innermost mind. You are to be very useful to him.
No.
Then he'll go back to the government.
If he pleases. If they please. If you please.
I am not going back to my husband. Arthur, be useful to him.
No, you are not coming to me. Always your father.
After a moment.
It was my little home in the country somehow said aloud you didn't care for me.
I fooled you to a small purpose.
I wish you had once made friends with my wife.
If we... This house I'm speaking of had made friends where we've only made tools and fools, we shouldn't now be cursed, as we are, all. George, who is a cork, trying to sink socially. Anne is mad, and a runaway.
Sarah, I've been devilish fond of you.
Be useful to Papa.
He shakes his head obstinately.
Praise me a little. Haven't I worked my best for my family?
Suppose I could be useful to him now. Would you, in spite of all, come to me? No half measures?
Arthur.
He makes a little passionate movement towards her, but she is cold.
It's time for me to vanish from this world, because I've nothing left to sell.
I can't help him. I don't want you.
He turns away.
I feel I've done my best.
Keep your father quiet.
I mean to leave him.
What does he say to that?
I've not yet told him.
What happens?
To sell my jewels. Spoils of a 10 years' war. £3,000. How much a year?
I'll buy them.
And return them? You have almost the right to make such a suggestion.
Stick to your father. He'll care for you.
No. We all pride ourselves on our lack of sentiment.
You must take money from your husband.
I have earned that, and spent it.
Lord Arthur, yielding once again to temptation.
I'm devilish fond of you.
At that moment, Abud comes out of the dining room. He is dressed in his best. Sarah responds readily to the interruption.
And you must give my kindest compliments to Lady Arthur and my affectionately to the children, and I'll let Papa know that you're going.
Let us under cover to your father.
Papa will stay in town through the session, of course, but they'll all tell me that £75 a year is comfortable income in Timbuktu.
She goes into the dining room. Abud has selected his boots from the corner, and now stands with them in his hand, looking rather helpless. After a moment,
I congratulate you, Mr. Abud.
My lord, I can't speak for myself.
Carnaby comes out of the dining room. He is evidently by no means recovered from his illness. He stands for a moment with an ironical eye on John Abud.
Son-in-law.
I'm told to get on my boots, sir.
Allow me to assist you.
I couldn't, sir.
Désolé.
Then he passes on. Abud sits on the sofa, furtively puts on his boots, and afterwards puts his shoes in his pockets.
You are so busy drinking health for the 2 fat farmers that I wouldn't interrupt you.
Goodbye. Describe all this to your brother, John.
So confirmed a bachelor.
Please say that we missed him.
Lord Arthur hands him the newspaper.
I've outraced your chronicles from London by some hours. There's a paragraph, the second column, near the bottom.
Carnaby, looking at it blindly.
They print villainously nowadays.
Inspired.
I trust his Grace is well.
Gouty.
Oh, doesn't the social aspect of this case interest you?
I object to feeding with the lower classes.
There's pride. How useful to note their simple manners. From the meeting of extremes, new ideas spring, new life.
Take that for a new social-political creed, Mr. Leete.
Do I lack one?
Please make my adieu to the bride.
Appropriate. Adieu. She enters nature's cloister. My epigram.
But, good heavens, are we to choose to be toiling animals?
To be such is my daughter's ambition.
You have not read that.
Carnaby, giving back the paper vexedly.
I can't see.
The Right Honourable Carnaby Leete is, we are glad to hear, completely recovered and will return to town for the opening of session.
I mentioned it.
We understand that although there has been no reconciliation with the government, it is quite untrue that this gentleman will in any way resume his connection with the opposition.
Inspired?
I am here from my father to answer any questions.
Carnaby, with some dignity and the touch of a threat.
Not now, my lord.
Dimmuck comes in at the front door.
The chase, my lord.
I will conduct you.
Please don't risk exposure.
Nay, I insist.
Health and happiness to you both, Mr. Abud.
Lord Arthur goes out, followed by Carnaby, followed by Dimmuck. At that moment, Mr. Smallpiece skips excitedly out of the dining room, a ferret-like little lawyer.
Oh, where is Mr. Leete?
Not seeing him, Mr. Smallpiece skips as excitedly back into the dining room. Dimmuck returns and hangs up his cloak, then goes towards Abud, whom he surveys.
Sir.
With which insult he starts for the dining room, reaching the door just in time to hold it open for Sir George Leete, who comes out. He surveys Abud for a moment, then explodes.
Damn you! Stand in the presence of your grandfather-in-law.
Abud stands up, Carnaby returns coughing, and Sir George looks him up and down.
I shall attend your funeral.
I don't know, Sir Sarah needs me.
I wonder at you, my son.
Have you any money to spare?
No.
For Sarah's housekeeper, I foresee a busy session.
Abud is now gingerly walking up the stairs.
Carnaby, look at that.
Sound in wind and limb. Tread boldly, son-in-law.
Abud turns, stands awkwardly for a moment, and then goes into the dining room. Sir George Leete, relapsing into a pinch of snuff.
I'm calm.
Regard this marriage with a wise eye. Was an amusing little episode.
Do you?
And forget its oddity. Now that the humiliation is irrevocable, is it a personal grievance to you?
Give me a dinner a day for the rest of my life, and I'll be content.
Lately, one by one, opinions and desires have been failing me. A flicker and then extinction. I shall shortly attain to being a most able critic upon life.
Shall I tell you again? You came into this world without a conscience. That explains you, and it's all that does. That such a damnable coupling as this should be permitted by God Almighty, or that the law shouldn't interfere. I've had my say.
Mr. Smallpiece again comes out of the dining room.
Mr. Leete.
Carnaby, ironically polite.
Mr. Smallpiece.
Mr. Crow is proposing your health.
Mr. Crow comes out, a crop-headed, beefy-looking farmer of 60.
Was?
There's a good enemy.
Get out of my road, lawyer Smallpiece.
Leave enough of him living to attend to my business.
Mr. Smallpiece, wriggling a bow to Carnaby.
Oh, dear sir.
Sir George Leete, disgustedly to Mr. Smallpiece.
You.
Employed in a small matter, as yet.
Carnaby to Crow.
I hope you spoke your mind of me.
Not behind your back, sir.
Mrs. George Leete leads Lady Leete from the dining room. Lady Leete is a very old, blind, and decrepit woman. Dolly is a buxom young mother, whose attire borders on the gaudy. Carnaby, with some tenderness.
Well, mother, dear.
Mr. Crow, bumptitiously to Sir George Leete.
Did my speech offend you, my lord?
Sir George Leete, sulkily.
I'm a baronet.
Who's this here?
Carnaby.
Step down, grandmother.
Who did you say you were?
Mrs. George Leete.
Take me to the fireside.
So Carnaby and Dolly lead her slowly to a chair by the fire, where they carefully bestow her. Mr. Smallpiece to Farmer Crow.
He's leaving Markswade, you know, and me agent.
Lady Leete, suddenly bethinking her.
Grace was not said. Fetch my chaplain at once.
I will run.
He runs into the dining room. Dolly calling after with her country accent.
Not Parson Remnant. The other one.
Lady Leete demanding.
Snuff!
Carnaby to his father.
Sir, my hand is a little unsteady.
Sir George and Carnaby between them, give Lady Leete her snuff.
Dolly, ought those children to be left so long?
All right, father. I have a mate.
Lady Leete sneezes.
She'll do that once too often altogether.
I'm cold.
I'm cold. I like my shawl.
Call out to your man for it.
Dolly, going to the dining room door.
Will a gentleman please ask Mr. George Leete for my cashmere shawl?
Mr. Crow to Carnaby.
And I drank the health of our grandson.
Now, suppose George were to assume your name, Mr. Crow.
Mr. Tozer comes in out of the dining room, of the worst type of 18th century parson, for which one may see Hogarth's Harlot's Progress. He is very drunk. Sir George Leete in his wife's ear.
Tozer.
Why?
To say grace.
Lady Leete folds her withered hands. Mr. Tozer, through his hiccups.
Damn you all!
Lady Leete reverently, thinking it is said.
Amen.
Only my joke.
Carnaby rising to the height of the occasion.
Mr. Tozer, I am indeed glad to see you upon this occasion, so delightfully drunk.
Oh, he's a gentleman, by nature.
Lie down, you dog.
George comes out carrying the cashmere shawl. George to his father.
Dolly wants her father to rent Markswade, sir.
Not me, my son. You're to be a farmer baronet.
Curse your impudence.
My one regret in dying would be to miss seeing him, sir.
George goes back into the dining room.
I'm tickled to think that the man marrying your daughter wasn't good enough for mine.
And yet at fisticuffs I'd back John Abud against our son George.
Dr. Remnant has come out of the dining room. Tozer has stumbled towards him and is wagging an argumentative finger.
Marriage means enjoyment.
Dr. Remnant, controlling his indignation.
I repeat that I have found in my own copy of the prayer book no insistence upon a romantic passion.
My interpretation of God's word is above criticism.
Mr. Tozer reaches the door and falls into the dining room. Carnaby weakly to Dr. Remnant.
Give me your arm for a moment.
I think Lady Cottesham has Mrs. John Abud prepared to start, sir.
I trust Anne will take no chill walking through the mud.
Won't you sit down, sir?
No.
For some moments Crow has been staring indignantly at Sir George. Now he breaks out.
The front door of this mansion is opened to a common gardener, and only then to me and mine?
Sir George Leete, virulently.
Damn you and yours, and damn them, and damn you again for the worst disgrace.
Damn you, sir. Have you paid him to marry the girl?
He turns away, purple-faced, and Sir George chokes impotently. Abud and Mr. Prestige come out talking. He is younger and less assertive than Farmer Crow. Mr. Prestige, pathetically.
All our family always has got drunk at weddings.
Abud in remonstrance.
Please, Uncle.
Mr. Crow, I have been much to blame for not seeking you sooner.
Mr. Crow, mollified.
Shake hands.
Carnaby offering his with some difficulty.
My arm is stiff, from an accident, but this is a maid's marriage, I assure you.
Mr. Prestige open-mouthed to Dr. Remnant.
One could hang bacon here.
Dolly, very high and mighty.
The family don't.
Carnaby to his father.
And won't you apologize for your remarks to Mr. Crow, sir?
Lady Leete demanding.
Snuff!
And your box to my mother, sir?
Sir George attends to his wife. Dolly, anxiously to Dr. Remnant.
Can a gentleman change his name?
Parson. Once noble, always noble, I take it.
Certainly. But I hope you have money to leave them, Mr. Crow.
Dolly to Abud.
John?
Dorothy?
You've not seen my babies yet?
Lady Leete sneezes.
Carnaby, do you intend to murder that Crow fellow? Or must I?
Mr. Smallpiece skips from the dining room.
Mr. John Abud.
Mr. Crow to Dr. Remnant as he nods towards Carnaby.
Don't tell me he's got over that fever yet.
The ladies say, are you ready or are you not?
I'll get thy cloak, John.
Mr. Prestige goes for the cloak. Carnaby has taken a pistol from the mantelpiece and now points it at Abud.
He's fit for heaven.
George Leete comes from the dining room and, noticing his father's action, says sharply,
I suppose you know that pistol's loaded.
Which calls everyone's attention. Dolly shrieks.
What if there had been an accident?
And he puts back the pistol. Abud takes his cloak from Prestige.
Thank you, Uncle.
I'm a proud man, Mr. Crow.
Pride.
George has a sudden inspiration and strides up to Abud.
Here ends the joke, my good fellow. Be off without your wife.
Abud stares, as do the others. Only Carnaby suddenly catches Remnant's arm. Mr. Prestige solemnly,
But it's illegal to separate them.
George giving up.
Mr. Prestige, you are the backbone of England.
Carnaby to Remnant.
Where are your miracles?
Mrs. Prestige comes out, a motherly farmer's wife, a mountain of a woman.
John, kiss your aunt.
Abud goes to her, and she obliterates him in an embrace. George to his father.
Sense of humor, sense of humor.
Snuff.
But no one heeds her this time.
It doesn't matter.
Smile. Let's be helpless gracefully.
There are moments when I'm not sure.
It's her own life.
Tozer staggers from the dining room, drunker than ever. He falls against the baluster and waves his arms.
Silence there for the corpse!
You beast!
Respect my cloth, Mr. Prestige.
That's not my name.
I'll have you to know that I'm Sir George Leete's baronet's most boon companion, and her ladyship never goes nowhere without me.
He subsides into a chair. Lady Leete, tearfully.
Snuff.
From the dining room comes Anne, her head bent. She is crossing the hall when Sarah follows, calling her.
Anne.
Anne turns back to kiss her. The rest of the company stands gazing. Sir George gives snuff to Lady Leete.
Goodbye, Sally.
Sarah, in a whisper.
Forget us.
George, relieving his feelings.
Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everything.
Abud goes to the front door and, opening it, stands waiting for her. She goes coldly but timidly to her father, to whom he puts her face up to be kissed.
Goodbye, Papa.
Carnaby, quietly, as he kisses her cheek.
I can do without you.
Sir George Leete, raging at the draught.
Shut that door.
I'm gone.
She goes with her husband. Mrs. Opie comes hurriedly out of the dining room. Too late.
Oh!
Run, Mrs. Opie.
There has started the new century.
Mrs. Opie opens the front door to look after them. Sir George Leete, with double energy.
Shut that door.
Lady Leete sneezes and then chokes. There's much commotion in her neighborhood.
No, she's hurt again.
Water!
Brandy!
Sarah, going.
I'll fetch both.
We must all die some day.
Mr. Tozer, who has struggled up to see what is the matter.
And go to
hell. You do believe in that, Mr. Tozer?
Mrs. Opie fanning the poor old lady.
She's better.
Carnaby to his guests.
Gentlemen, punch.
Prestige and Smallpiece, Mrs. Prestige, George and Dolly move towards the dining room. Mr. Prestige to Smallpiece.
You owe all this to me.
Dolly, I'm going.
Mrs. Prestige to her husband as she nods towards Carnaby.
Nathaniel, look at him.
George to his father-in-law.
Must we come too?
Mrs. Prestige as before.
I can't help it. A sneering, carping, cavilling devil.
Mark's Wade is to let, as I hear, Mr. Leete.
Mark's Wade is to let.
He goes on his way to the dining room, meeting Sarah, who comes out carrying a glass of water and a decanter of brandy. Sir George Leete is comfortably warming himself at the fire. The living room of John Abud's new cottage has bare plaster walls, and its ceilings and floor are of red brick, all fresh-looking but not new. In the middle of the middle wall there is a latticed window, dimity curtained. Upon the plain shelf in front are several flower-pots. To the right of this, a door, cross-beamed and with a large lock on it besides the latch. Against the right-hand wall is a dresser, furnished with dishes and plates. Below it is a common-looking grandfather clock. Below this, a small door which, when opened, shows winding stairs leading to the room above. In the left-hand wall there is a door which is almost hidden by the fireplace which juts out below it. In the fireplace a wood fire is laid, but not lit. At right angles to this stands a heavy oak settle opposite a plain deal table, just beyond which is a little bench. On either side of the window is a Windsor armchair. Between the window and the door hangs a framed sampler. In the darkness, the sound of the unlocking of a door and of Abud entering is heard. He walks to the table, strikes a light upon a tinder-box, and lights a candle which he finds there. Anne is standing in the doorway. Abud is in his stocking feet.
Don't come further. Here are your slippers.
He places one of the Windsor chairs for her, on which she sits while he takes off her wet shoes and puts on her slippers, which he found on the table. Then he takes her wet shoes to the fireplace. She sits still. Then he goes to the door and brings in his own boots from the little porch and puts them in the fireplace too. Then he locks the door and hangs up the key beside it. Then he stands looking at her. But she does not speak, so he takes the candle, lifts it above his head, and walks to the dresser. Abud encouragingly.
Our dresser. Thomas Jupp made that. Plates and dishes. Here's Uncle Prestige's clock.
7:30.
That's upstairs. Table and bench, deal. Oak settle. Solid.
Charming.
Windsor chairs. Mother's sampler.
Home.
Is it as you wish? I have been glad that you're not seeing it until tonight.
I'm sinking into the strangeness of this place.
Very weary. It's been a long 9 miles.
She does not answer. He goes and considers the flower-pots in the window.
I still have on my cloak.
Hang it behind the door there. No matter if the wet drips.
I can wipe up a puddle.
She hangs up her cloak. He selects a flower-pot and brings it to her.
Hyacinth bulbs for the spring.
Anne, after a glance.
I don't want to hold them.
He puts back the pot, a little disappointed.
Out there's the scullery.
It's very cold.
If we light the fire now, that means more trouble in the morning.
She sits on the settle.
Yes, I am very weary.
Go to bed.
Not yet.
After a moment.
How much light one candle gives. Sit where I may see you.
He sits on the bench. She studies him curiously.
Well, this is an experiment.
Abud with reverence.
God help us both.
Amen. Some people are so careful of their lives. If we fail miserably, we'll hold our tongues, won't we?
I don't know. I can't speak of this.
These impossible things which are done mustn't be talked of. That spoils them. We don't want to boast of this, do we?
I fancy nobody quite believes that we're married.
Here's my ring. Real gold.
Abud, with a sudden fierce throw-up of his head.
Never you remind me of the difference between us.
Don't speak to me so.
Now I'm your better.
My master, the door's locked.
Abud nodding.
I know that I must be, or be a fool.
Anne, after a moment.
Be kind to me.
Abud with remorse.
Always I will.
You are master here.
And I've angered you.
And if I fail, I'll never tell you, to make a fool of you. And you're trembling.
She sees his hand, which is on the table, shake.
Look at that now.
Anne lifting her own.
My white hands must redden. No more dainty appetite. No more pretty books.
Have you learned to scrub?
Not this floor.
Mother always did the bricks with a mop. Tomorrow I go to work. You'll be left for all day.
I must make friends with the other women around.
My friends are very curious about you.
I'll wait to begin till I'm seasoned.
4 o'clock's the hour for getting up.
Early rising was always a vice of mine.
Breakfast quickly, and I take my dinner with me.
In a handkerchief.
Hot supper, please.
It shall be ready for you.
There is a silence between them for a little. Then he says timidly,
May I come near to you?
Anne in a low voice.
Come.
He sits beside her, gazing.
Wife, I never have kissed you.
Shut your eyes.
Are you afraid of me?
We're not to play such games at love.
I can't help wanting to feel very tender towards you.
Think of me not as a wife, but as a mother of your children. If it's to be so, treat me so.
You are a part of me.
We must try and understand it, as a simple thing.
But shall I kiss you?
Anne, lowering her head.
Kiss me.
But when he puts his arm round her, she shrinks.
No.
But I will. It's my right.
Almost by force he kisses her. Afterwards she clenches her hands and seems to suffer.
Have I hurt you?
She gives him her hand with a strange little smile.
I forgive you.
Abud encouraged.
Anne, we're beginning life together.
Remember, work's enough. No stopping to talk.
I'll work for you.
I'll do my part. Something will come of it.
For a moment they sit together, hand in hand. Then she leaves him and paces across the room. There is a slight pause.
Papa, I said, we've all been in too great a hurry getting civilized. False dawn. I mean to go back.
He laughed.
So he saw I was of no use to him, and he's penniless, and he let me go. When my father dies, what will he take with him? For do you take your works with you into heaven or hell, I believe? Much wit. Sally is afraid to die. Don't you aspire like George's wife? I was afraid to live, and now I am content.
She walks slowly to the window, and from there to the door, against which she places her ear. Then she looks round at her husband.
I can hear them chattering.
Then she goes to the little door and opens it. Abud takes up the candle.
I'll hold the light. The stairs are steep.
He lights her up the stairs. End of Act 4. End of The Marrying of Ann Leete by Harley Granville-Barker.